Hello, and welcome to the third and another episode of Relationships with DAP. We are the Community Education Outreach Team for the Domestic Abuse Project of Delaware County, also known as DAP. I am Nicole Powell, the Community Education Manager.
My name is Veronika Lynch, and I am the Outreach Awareness Specialist.
And we will be your hosts once again today as we learn and talk about the Netflix reality series Bling Empire. It's time to get
real.
One
day that will be.
Well, I was about to say that.
And, we'll get there. It's episode 3.
That's it. That's all it is. We have so much more time to go. But so far, so good. No complaints. Right? So again, we're talking about the Netflix reality show, Bling Empire, and it came to our attention from a colleague of ours about an unhealthy relationship. And if you have not seen or heard of the movie Crazy Rich Asians, that's kind of like what this is, just in real life. And a gentleman, Kevin, he moved out to LA, pursuing his modeling career, fairly successful, and then he gets introduced into this community of a group of wealthy, crazy rich Asians, basically. It's like, oh, I've never seen this before. And also Kevin is very attractive, yet single, but has a crush on one of the people in this close group of friends full of wealth, right? And his crush is a young lady named Kelly, but Kelly is not single.
No.
She is indeed in a relationship with a gentleman who is a former actor, maybe current. Right. We know him as a Power Ranger. Kind of cool.
That just cracked me up. She's like, well, you might know him as the Red Power Ranger. You're like, well, you never see their faces, so I wouldn't know him as that.
And she says that. She's like, oh, pity you didn't get a chance to see his handsome face.
Yeah.
But in the opening credits of that, they look so lovey-dovey in a very huge bathroom, very affectionate towards one another. But when it came to my attention to watch the show, I was like, oh, they're it. Yeah. Like, they're that unhealthy couple that appear to have it all together, but if you kind of peel back the layers, there's a lot going on. So we're going to observe a little bit more or really analyze and dig deeper into Kelly and Andrew's relationship, because it is indeed toxic. We don't want to give away too much if you haven't seen it, but we definitely encourage you to watch it. So what did you think about like just seeing that first scene with them together?
In the shower or like post shower
bathroom?
Yeah. Well, right. Like that's our first introduction. Of course, you're going to assume that that's the best. I mean, I also went into it knowing like who the unhealthy relationship was.
Okay.
Because that's also, if I didn't know that, maybe I would think it was the married couple, who are also like the richest out of the group of rich Asians. But I think that's, having that introduction in such a lovey way, right? Where they're like kissing, they're hugging, they're playing around. And then, in the back of your mind, the stark differences that you're going to see, not even like 15 minutes later. I think that's, it's telling of how relationships like this work, that there are those highs and lows that we see.
Yeah. And a really interesting part of Kelly's story individually is that this is like her second quote unquote unhealthy relationship.
Yes. Our introduction to Kelly is literally that she can't trust people because she was married early 20s, she said. So she's not even I
think she's 30.
Yeah, 30. So early 20s, she's married to a man who apparently ran one of the largest cyber scams in America.
Dude,
so that's a pretty big trauma, right, to have on your shoulders, and to go from being married and taken care of from this man to on your own. And she said that they had to give the government around like $168 million.
Yeah.
And that now she's a like Hollywood executive. She built all this stuff for herself, but there's still that trust issues. So we know going into it that once you have that trauma, it is hard to go into your next relationship. So she's bringing a lot of that in with her into Andrew. And I think you can kind of see the effects that it has on her in that relationship now.
Yeah, that's a good point because, I think in any situation, people want to be careful in terms of what baggage they bring into a
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And baggage can look a variety of ways
Right.
for an individual, whether it be stemming from relationships with parents, siblings, former partners, those kinds of things. And like you mentioned, trauma. And for her, her main thing is I just want to be able to trust my partner because
Right.
there was a serious lack of in my former relationship with my spouse,
Mm-hmm.
or ex-spouse rather.
Right.
And so her thing with Andrew is literally her validating the relationship is the fact that she can trust him. That's it.
Right. Yeah, because I think she even says, when talking about her ex-husband, she makes a comment. She's like, "Well, I didn't even know who I was sleeping next to."
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge, especially
Mm-hmm.
someone you're married to, you're tied to them, like legally, you share your life together and sharing a home with the person, sharing a bed with the person. So that definitely has long lasting scars. And then we move into our next introduction with Kelly is Kelly and her friends, right? They're all getting lunch. And that's where you see like Kevin express that crush. And he's not like hiding it at all.
No,
That
it's
man
definitely
was
not a secret.
blatant, you know. He
I would
was like,
think. I think Andrew. Do you think Andrew knows he has a crush on you? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. I would hope that he doesn't play it up when he's around, just in case, because you don't know what that's going to happen later, you know?
Oh no, I don't
But,
think he's that naive.
they straight up ask her, what's your dating, or she asks Kevin like about his dating life. And he was like, well, I'm not dating
Mm-hmm.
anyone. And
Mm-hmm.
then they're like, Kelly, we're worried for you.
Yeah, because it starts off like with Anna, one of her good friends,
Mm-hmm.
taking her on surprising her. So Anna and Andrew worked together to surprise Kelly for her birthday for a trip to Paris. Oh, if only.
Right.
Uh,
And it was because her favorite restaurants in Paris, right? Kelly was,
yes, she said I wanted to surprise Kelly to go eat at my favorite restaurant, and my favorite restaurant's in Paris, so we're going to Paris. Okay, one day,
You're
when I
like,
grow up.
great. Yeah. Anna, please, if you
Yeah,
need to take anyone else to Paris,
if you need
I'll
any
be
more
right
new
there.
friends, let me know. Yeah, please.
Hmm. We're super
Um,
chill.
see, yeah, like listen to our podcast. I promise you'll love us.
Yeah.
Um, yes, and so while in Paris, we've both traveled abroad, and jet lag is a thing.
Right.
And Anna and Kelly go out together and go shopping while Andrew stays back at the hotel and sleeps. And so
Hmm.
Andrew wakes up, realizes Kelly's not there, and flips out.
Blows up.
I mean, blowing up, I feel like is an understatement, but
Right.
yes, he
Right.
legitimately blows up, calls her, and she puts it on speaker, and Anna's sitting there, and they just both look disturbed.
I mean, the opening of the phone call is him cussing her out. Right.
Yes.
And automatically, it's not even a question of like, oh, hey, where are you? I just woke up. I'm alone. It's
Just checking to
immediately,
see where you are. You
yeah,
okay?
it's
Mm-hmm.
immediately screaming. And
Mm-hmm.
then he limits her answers to yes or no. Doesn't
Yes.
even give her an opportunity to be like, oh, we're going to be back in 5 minutes. We were just grabbing lunch or something. Right. And he says, you can say yes or no. And then when she tries to talk more, he again screams yes or no. And I think a big part of this too, having it be caught on camera and then also in front of her friend, there's
Yeah.
that shame right there instantly,
True.
right? Like Kelly's not even looking at anyone, you can tell that she's physically like, uncomfortable. She's cowering. And even Anna, like that's hard to
Oh
listen
my
to your friend get
goodness.
yelled at and you not say anything. But how do you navigate that type of conversation, right? That's not even a conversation. It's just her getting screamed at.
Yeah, and I had to like quotes write down some of the things he actually said
Right.
verbatim. And he said, "Your lack of effort sucks. You can easily say, I'm not going to leave this hotel until I let Andrew know."
Yeah.
And Kelly was really just kind of taken aback because her thing is like, well, first of all, this is not this serious. And it wasn't.
Right.
And he's like, how would you feel? She's like, I really wouldn't care because she
Yeah.
probably wouldn't. And again, it's a very minor issue that he has blown way out of proportion,
Yeah.
and decided to again like literally curses at her, and fortunately, which isn't easy to do, but fortunately, like, Kelly just like, you know what, this is not going anywhere, I'm going to hang up the phone.
Yeah. And he knows that she's gonna hang up and that gets him
Even
riled
more
up
upset.
too. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
her and Anna's was like, oh my gosh, like as a friend though, I can only imagine what that's like. Like you're in, like literally, like she said, like Anna done shut down the whole place for them to shop by themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you have your partner on speakerphone and they are cursing you out, yelling at you. And you're probably scared because you don't know what they are thinking, what their ultimate response is going to be. And it just really just makes everyone feel uncomfortable and tense up automatically.
Yeah. And then right after that conversation, she's kind of talking about how they resolve issues. And I
Yep.
think she mentions, yeah, well, Andrew would like it if we were locked in the room together for 8 hours until we work things out, which is not how. Right. We know healthy conflict. We know, communication, talking things out. That's definitely a healthy way to solve issues.
Sure.
Being locked in a room for 8 hours, that's like a hostage situation at that point.
Right.
Because if two
Jeez.
people are not, both people don't want to be a part of the conversation, or one person doesn't want to be part of the conversation, then maybe it shouldn't happen at that time. And you can come back later on when both people are on board and they want to talk and express things. But to force someone in the room with you, and that just ties back to his comment about, saying that she shouldn't leave until he knows where they're going. So it's like permission. So he controls everything we can see. He believes that she should tell him where she's going to go, and I don't know why, because he doesn't know if he wants to go with her or just tell her she can't go.
Right.
And then things get solved on his terms, where he's, we decide how long we're here for until things are figured out the way that he wants them to be.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And Kelly makes it clear to Anna and to also the audience when she had like her one-on-one interview that this happens pretty often.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to, resolve a conflict, like you said, to have healthy conflict and you talk about it and you move past it, move forward. But this is just an ongoing cycle. And we fortunately and unfortunately, we get a chance to actually see them have this conversation about the disagreement and like where things kind of went left. And when we do conversations in the community, we go over not only the power and control wheel, but also the cycle of abuse. And my goodness, if this is not the perfect example and personification of the cycle of abuse. If I've never seen it before, but it's like so blatantly in your face because he sits there and apologizes.
Also, I feel like something that was just staring at me in the face. We see him cry, right? They zoom in on him crying. And I was like, this man is a paid actor. A paid actor.
That was the part for me too.
Of course.
It was the tears for me.
I was like, oh my God, that killed me. Because of course, right, when you're uncomfortable, you might cry. Those were not real tears. Or maybe, he's hyping it up, but that's also what we know is to be like manipulative. To really, and that's like, we see gaslighting here where he's telling her, you didn't honor our relationship. And I didn't know you would want to hurt us like that.
He said that, yeah.
And so he's, again, blaming his reaction onto Kelly, where it's like, well, of course, that's a normal way to react when a person, like, because when you use words dishonor or honoring, that puts so much weight onto what she did, which was a totally fine thing to do. If you want to leave, you can leave. Like, that's not an issue. But he turns it and manipulates her. So she then has to comfort him. So she's like the, aggressor now because she made him feel bad, which I was like, this man's a paid actor. That was killing me. I was like looking around. I was like, oh my God. Put this mask back on him. I can't look at it.
No, seriously. It was the tears for me. Like the I'm sorry, okay, you say sorry, but this man cried like on cue.
Yeah. Yes. And they're like falling so perfectly down. No one cries. No one's good looking when they cry.
You know what? I can't with you.
Okay. I did acting.
I need to see some more passion behind that cry, sir.
It's not. Okay. Then maybe I'll believe it. But like, and then you also have to think too, how much can Kelly push back against his apology when there's cameras there? And what is that going to do for her later on? I think, she has to, because she even says in her confessional, she's like, well, I haven't figured out all the best ways to keep him from reacting like that,
Right.
which we know as like, that to me stood out as like a safety plan.
Mm-hmm.
She does,
Or going
like,
into that. Mm-hmm.
right, like survival tactics here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What can she do when we're in the cycle of abuse, in that tension building phase where she has to walk on eggshells? What can she do
Yep.
to like keep it from exploding? And she hasn't figured that out yet. So I
Yeah.
think, part of that, when you have, right, without cameras, these dynamics are really hard to navigate. And then you add the layer of cameras and then knowing that millions of people are going to be watching this later on and commenting on it. So I think that puts pressure on her in the moment to just kind of have to agree with what he says and accept the apology, because if maybe she disagreed, it makes him look bad in front of the camera. What is that going to do when they're not there? And so,
I would even argue that the cameras have nothing to do with it. I think because she has, I don't want to say convinced herself, but she said that, listen, I'm all that he has.
right. She just want to
And
abandon him.
right. And
Yeah.
she's like, she hopes for him to treat her better. Cause like we always say, it's never a flat out like, oh, I'm going to control you, or I don't want you to do this, this, and this. Like no one ever shows their controlling or quote unquote abusive or unhealthy behavior straight out. Like you actually fall in love with this compassionate, soft, sensitive person that you see all the greatness in. And then the switch gets flipped. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The switch gets flipped all of a sudden. And then you see like them in this awful light, but it seems like that awful light is dim in comparison to what the greatness you've seen before. And you're expecting that to come through.
Yeah.
And I mean, she always says, well, he always apologizes and comes back and then he'll change.
Which
and
we know, right? She's explaining the cycle of abuse to us right there.
Verbatim.
Right.
Like if I've never seen like the walking on eggshells, the explosion, and then the honeymoon phase of the apologies. And oh my goodness, the highlight for me was this therapy session.
Oh, yeah.
Because they go to therapy. And a part of the cycle of abuse are like, oh, you make false promises. They promise to change. They promise to never happen again. They'll even make promises to do the work that I want to change, that they're committed, and that they'll go to therapy or counseling, right? So there you go. And it's just
that. What did you think about that?
The therapy session?
Yeah.
It was painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
He and what I appreciate about the therapist is that she called him out on like his false reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was like, I'm always in reality. She's like, but I want to encourage you to think about it in a realistic perspective. And he's like, but I am. He's like, if she says, I want to leave and, this is over, then fine, I'll let her. He's like, then the therapist says, well, she just said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his response automatically was, well, I'm committed. Sir.
Right. And then the therapist sets aside Kelly and it's like, this is not okay. Right. There's multiple people throughout the show express genuine concern.
For sure.
And we know. So it's like, it's good because we talk about bystander effect and people not saying anything and not opening those doors for conversation and letting her. So at least we do see good examples of that throughout where people do express concern. You don't really see, it's hard to, because you do see some judgment, right? With the confessionals, the side comments where Kelly's not there and people are talking about her relationship. And I think it's right after the fight, Anna has her confessional and she's saying how she doesn't think anything, she uses other language, but she's like, couldn't be worse.
There's no way. It's nothing that good. Nothing can be that good.
And, we know that that's not how these things work.
Absolutely not. One of the things that really I found to be unfortunate was the fact that Anna, when I think they had like a party and Kelly and Andrew came together, and I guess it kind of spread around that Andrew's behavior was really poor in Paris, and they kind of came back together, had a little sidebar with the girls, and Andrew's kind of like on looking. I think they had a lot to do with production, but I digress. And so he's like, oh, I don't like this. This makes me feel like really uncomfortable. I don't appreciate them talking about this in this moment. He might have a valid point. Again, production though. But Anna's like, I thought she would have been stronger than that to just leave.
Yeah.
You don't know this lady's strength.
Yeah.
And she has more strength to stay and try to deal with it than to leave. I think people really underestimate what goes into leaving a toxic environment.
Yeah, and Kelly says that she feels as if it's her job to fix him, right? Because he
Yeah. Oh
expresses how his childhood
God.
is affecting his behavior now.
Mhm.
And that when his apology, he's like, I'm still learning. But again,
Mhm.
like, and we've said this, if things happen in our childhood, yeah, that does affect our behavior. Of course
Mhm.
it does. But it is our responsibility, especially as adults, to
Right.
check ourselves.
Right.
Like, this is my toxic behavior. I'm working on fixing it. It's no one else's job to fix that but me. But Kelly does feel as if it's her job to fix him so he can, I guess, be happy and feel good. And so that once he's fixed, then they can have their healthy relationship. So she's still
Yeah.
holding on, of course. And we know that that's a huge dynamic that we see, people wanting to fix
Mhm.
their like abusive
All,
partners.
all the
We see that
time.
all the time. And then two, with Kelly's past relationship, she also feels as if this is her only shot.
Mhm.
And that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Wanting to feel loved and be in a relationship is a very strong connection.
And she says that. She's like, no, we're so in love. And I think she alludes to the fact that she doesn't even allude to it. She kind of says it. I just don't know how she said it verbatim, but she simply says kind of along the lines of like, we're so in love, we just don't know when to like let go.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. Like, even when we do safety planning conversations in the community, it's okay. You not only have to make sure that they're physically safe, but like emotionally safe as well. Like, are they ready?
Yeah.
And if not, like, how do you support them around that? Which, fortunately, although the therapist may not have like a specific domestic violence
Yeah.
background such as us, however, she was very well equipped to like literally say, "Do you mind if I speak with her alone?" So she got
Yes.
Kelly alone, was able to speak to her with her one on one and say, "So what can we do for you like tonight? Like, let's work on an immediate safety plan," because Kelly had said that she wanted to. That it was a toxic and unhealthy relationship. Again, Drew counteracted and was like, "We have a wonderful, beautiful life. It's just not perfect."
Yeah. Yeah.
But the counselor, she's like, "What can we do for the evening?" And Kelly wanted to temporarily separate. And so the counselor or therapist talks to her about that, brings Andrew back in, and bless Andrew's little heart. He goes out and says a prayer that is going to work out. And he comes in, and Kelly's like, "No, I
Yeah.
don't,
You got
I
a
don't
week.
want it." You have a week. And she was also understanding of the parenting experiences that Andrew had, and the
Yeah.
therapist tapped into that. But she also made it clear, she's like, that's not my responsibility to take that on for you.
Right.
And
She's
his
not
his
his
thing
parent.
is,
She's
she's
not a
not his
surrogate
parent.
mom. She's not anything. Like, we
She doesn't want
do.
to baby him.
Yeah. When we're with people, right, you have compassion, you have empathy for them, but that doesn't mean that, again, we're responsible for their emotional
Behavior.
well-being at every moment of every day.
That
But
was her
it's
point.
something that we're like in charge of ourselves. And
That
I
was
thought a
her
week was
point.
a good amount of time.
Yeah. And she even, I mean, he was really toxic. His response to her was, "Well,
Yeah.
listen, if you just give me a hug, I'll leave you alone." She's like, "That's not true." And you
Yeah.
know it's not true. Why would you say
It's
that?
like we see the tactics, like the power and control tactics laid out perfectly, right? There's
Yeah.
gaslighting, there's minimizing, there's straight up denying,
Straight
right?
up
There's
denying.
blaming.
Mm-hmm.
So we see it all laid out. So, and we know that mental and emotional abuse is just as strong as physical abuse. And I think this show really opened a lot of people's eyes up to that.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people had seen that laid out so clearly before. And I don't know and I don't think everyone's using the same language that we're using because this is what we're trained. We know
Right.
like how to speak about this, but I definitely think it like woke people up to be like, oh, like that's
This is
not
what this looks
okay.
like.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, this is the power control classically.
Right. Like if we could have written a script, this
This
is
was
what it
it.
would have looked like.
Absolutely. And mind you, he never laid a hand on her.
Right.
Never got physical. And when people see domestic abuse projects, oh, that's not me. Because
Yeah.
they're not laying their hands on you. That is
Yeah.
the most abusive relationship I've ever seen it just by him using his words. That's
Yeah.
it, and that's all. And as we know, like, we'll say this time and time again until it doesn't become relevant. Statistics state on average, not maximum, not minimum, but on average, it could be more or less. It takes 7 times for someone to leave an unhealthy relationship for good.
Right.
And classically speaking, we see her go back and
Mm-hmm.
they
Right. That's
consider
how it ends.
reconciliation. Yeah. But before they even reconcile, she does meet up with her friends and she shares that they have broken up, and their response was all over the place.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was all bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because poor thing, she's like, I haven't slept in 2 days and we broken up. And they're like, yeah, good job. It's about time. Well, are you the relationship that goes, are y'all the couple that kind of breaks up and then goes back together?
Yeah. And she's
Not
like,
helping, guys.
yeah, right. Because first of all, you're putting her on the spot. And then there's that, again, that layer of like almost having to apologize if she does go back,
Yep.
because now her friends have set the tone that that would be looked down upon.
And once they set that tone and they did reconcile, she lied.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
no longer felt comfortable saying, we did meet up.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think she went on a date with Kevin, and I think Kevin kind of like felt like she was still with Andrew. And
Because also give the woman some time. Like maybe that was something
that
that the
wasn't
show
appropriate.
pushed. They were like, "Hey, Kevin," because they set the tone in the beginning, like that Kevin wanted to date her. So maybe that's something that the producers. Who knows? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, even if it is the producers pushing that together, they should also know that give her a break. You filmed her getting yelled at. You filmed her having to sit through that crying, a therapy session, breaking up with him, and now you think like this would be the time for her to go on a date with. Of course, who wouldn't be like shut down and detached emotionally?
I felt so bad for her. And so this again goes into like the response of her friends, of her quote unquote support system or lack thereof, and how they did not safety plan, and how we would encourage
Yeah.
others to kind of really be more considerate to their family and or friends
Yeah.
who are going through these kinds of situations, because it's hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard enough being in it. It's hard enough, being a part of the relationship and really not knowing which way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because she even says like a part of her feels like, you leave, this is unhealthy, and the other part
Yeah.
of her is like, oh, but you love him, he's so cute.
Right. And she says he has a good heart and good intentions. And that's something, yeah, we see this all the time. Because too, we like the show laid out for us, not all the moments are bad moments. Because our introduction to them is a cute, lovey moment. And you can feel that they really love each other. And so, and I think people, when they talk about or they think about domestic violence, or like the narrative that they have in their mind is that it's constant fear and
Yeah.
pain, which it could be. But at the same time, it's not always like that for some people. And that's why it is hard to leave, because maybe they don't fear physical safety wise. That emotional connection you have with the person plays a huge role in your life, and it means a lot, and it has a lot of weight. And so I think people minimize that. Like when you ask a person to break up, or not ask, you tell them to break up. And then you kind of get, they're like, oh, I thought you would, like with Anna saying, I thought you'd be stronger, as if that isn't a horrible thing to do. Breaking up with anyone, no matter how the circumstances, is a horrible thing, and it hurts. So like people are not empathetic to that.
Yeah, and they just keep being pushy. Like what they don't realize, and what we always, tell people when we talk about safety planning, is you want to be able to give that person back that power and control that
Right.
they've lost. And you pushing her is just reinforcing what Andrew already does to her. It's
Yeah.
not helpful, and it's
And they're
frustrating.
talking down to her, and they're not acknowledging the fact that this is a woman who has her own career.
Yeah.
She clearly can get things done. She knows she can make decisions that work for herself, and no one is giving her the, I guess, benefit where they believe that she can do that for herself.
And I
It's
think,
immediately, they're like, well, you're going to make the wrong choice, right? Like you guys might
yeah.
get back together, so you're going to make that bad choice. Like, and so she doesn't feel as if no one's giving her that push to be like, well, you know what's best for you, do what's best for you.
Yeah.
And I
And
think, oh, go ahead.
nope, you go.
One thing that bothers me, I don't know if this is just me being like in my job and think this, but I do think that the show had a responsibility to like provide information after showing scenes like that, like a hotline number or something like that, because that could have also been very triggering for people to watch. Maybe giving them like, moments back where they felt in those things. So I do think that the show kind of like, if you're going to expose like millions of people to this, because the show was watched by tons, then you should also provide the information to like, if anyone has questions.
Well, yeah, that typically happens. Like if you're a teen mom watcher, like I used to be,
Mhm.
I mean, they like, having healthy sex life, like go to
Right.
it's your sex life or something.org. Yes, you're right. Every other show does it. That's a great point.
Because that was like that's Kelly's storyline, basically, is like they each have their own thing, right? You have Anna being, she's like this, does whatever she wants. She was gone for months or something. And that's why when she's back at the party in the first episode, everyone's like, Anna's here. And so they each have like their role that they play. And that's what the show gives Kelly. They're like, she is the one who is victimized by her partners. And so I think like they kind of did her a disservice with that too.
Yeah, and I think it really would have been helpful too I mean, granted, they don't know, like, unless they call somebody like our agency and our team to educate, the production company, the cast of being her friends and how to support her in this. Like, you're not going to know.
But it's LA where a lot of this stuff is coming to light, right? Like the Me Too movement, Time's Up, right? You would think we've had these conversations.
And I mean, I think as you and I like brought up the whole like even like LA, like that's when like the infamous, unfortunate like OJ Simpson lifestyle happened. Like now that is, if nothing else, that should have spirit. That was all the way back in '92.
Right. Wait, who else? Like there's stuff with like Tina Turner. We just see stuff with like Rihanna, and then the stuff with like. That came out
it's
like
just
the clips.
People
it's everywhere.
Just have unhealthy relationships.
Yeah, and then we were talking about like the friends not giving her back his power and control. I was like, well, these are also people who are used to having power and control over everything they do too. So maybe they don't know like what that looks like to give it to someone else.
That's true. And one of the most basic forms of safety planning I suggest is always just providing a listening ear. Yeah. But you have to be careful because there's a fine line between listening and being judgmental. And you want to be able to be that go-to person for that survivor who clearly, again, like Kelly just shut down. She really did. She no longer felt like she could have a productive conversation with her friends about her relationship and that they would support her, because her thing is like, I'm tired of having this conversation. So I'm just not going to tell them we're together.
Of course.
Which isn't safe for anybody, because once he comes around, then that's a whole nother blow up. And then she doesn't feel safe. So ever if there is a time where he really does blow up and she's uncomfortable, who can she go to? And you would hope, and I know they would want her to come to them, but they're really not making it easy for her to come to them with something, whatever to happen. So I guess we should actually then tell them what they should do.
We can.
I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, because not only does Kelly also answer to her friends now, but she also had to answer to all the people who's watched the show. And after they like the comments, like all the tweets and everything, I think she put out a statement about them getting back together and being like, we are still in therapy. We are working every day. Our love is unconditional. Which I think it's, this is just something that really highlights how like long it takes to leave a relationship like this.
Yeah, it takes time for more than one reasons. Of course, like financially, that ain't a problem. Right. Because they're good. But this emotional, verbal, and mental, this minimizing, denying, and blaming these threats, because I really do feel like it has been said, I can't live without you. I feel like that's been said at some point.
The tone has been set. Right. The tone is set.
No question about it.
Yeah.
No question about it. And like he's like, they are together, so they have put out a statement that they're still together, and that's fine. But I think if we walk away with anything as we conclude this conversation, how do friends support? We've said so far, providing a supportive ear, ensuring that they're ready, that they're emotionally safe. But how else would we also share with friends and family members on how to support a loved one in an unhealthy relationship?
I guess like you were thinking like also physical safety, setting up a quick plan to be like, if anything happens, you can text me this and I'll come and I'll come get you. Or you can come here if I can't get you. Maybe if we're talking about Kelly in particular, maybe letting her have a space at the house that she can just come and like decompress and get away from. But I think like money wise, it's hard because I do think Kelly pays for. I get the feeling that Kelly pays for the most in the relationship because the man hasn't been in anything since Power Rangers. Okay.
True. Yeah. Again, financially, that's not a problem. Physically, yes, because the therapist did ask, like, do you have a place to go for a week? She's like, yeah, I'll be fine, and she did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they also use their dog as like a pawn too, which is kind of
Yeah.
unfortunate.
And we know that to be true of the
Yes,
role that
pets.
animals like play.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we saw, everything was literally like textbook
Mm-hmm.
abusive relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I like you said, like code words. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if I text you, my favorite is popcorn. I don't know why. I mean, I like popcorn, but my
Right.
favorite.
You always say that.
I don't know. It just happened. You know, Eric Anonymous. Nobody knows what you're talking about. You know,
That's true. That's true.
popcorn or like, hey, you know, how girlfriends, you know, text if they're like on a bad date, maybe that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, just kind of like a
Exactly.
heads up, like, oh, this is a moment, like, be on standby.
Right. Like if you don't have a therapist who can give you a safety plan to break up and kind of like gives the news for you, right? You can let friends know, hey, this is when this is going to happen. If you don't hear from me in an hour, give me a call.
Right.
You know, or maybe swing by if you don't hear from me by tonight.
Yeah. And I will also add, again, I'm also an advocate of like being very cautious on social media. You know how I feel about social media.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan because it can be triggering and dangerous for some people. So even like when because they get together a lot, again, probably due to the show. But I mean, when they are together, be careful of what you post because he might say, well, who you been hanging out with? Well, you said you weren't going to hang out with that person. I'm sure he probably has some tension towards Kevin. I would hope not. You know, I hope they're mature enough to kind of move past it, but they say there is.
Right.
You know, so be careful what you post on social media with one another. Be careful if you're sharing your location with other people because it may not be safe in that moment. Again, another
big don't bring up the arguments when the guy is around or the girl is around at a party. Yeah. You know, just being aware of like what the consequences of actions can be.
Yeah.
You know, thinking for your friend's emotional and physical safety in these moments if you are aware of something that's happening.
Yeah. And please don't be the big, bad, brave friend to actually confront the person in a setting. Like, it's not safe for anybody. And again, the conversation when they get home will probably unlikely be pleasant. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So be careful about that because although you may not feel the immediate outcome, your friend might feel more of the long-term outcome, and that's not fair or safe. Yeah. There's a lot that we could think about and discuss.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's what places like the Domestic Abuse Project is for. Of course, the national hotline. That's what we're for. That's what the national hotline is for.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely connect with people because, you know, like ours, every hotline regarding domestic violence, we help not just victims and survivors, but also people who want to help others get through their situation. It's not easy. And we encourage others to kind of be patient, which her friends are not.
Yeah.
We definitely encourage, you know, people to be patient with their loved ones and their experience. And, you know, you and I both
tough
that.
Love. I hate hearing that.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it's tough love. And I'm like, doesn't sound very loving. Okay. Yeah. Just sounds like mean.
And again, like you're just doing the same thing that their partner's doing.
Right.
Which makes, and you and I both have had like personal experiences where we've been the friend of someone who's in a very unhealthy relationship. And it's like, I love you. I'm here if you need me. You know, I'll continue to talk through this madness every time it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, just tell me how you feel.
Yeah, and if anyone even has questions just about like what would this look like, you know, this is something I've seen. Again, like you can call any hotline that's like domestic violence focused, and you know, you will always get someone who will be there to answer your questions.
Absolutely. Are there anything else, any last things you want to share about safety planning, the friends' responses and the efforts or lack thereof that they had in response to Kelly and Andrew?
I think we covered everything that's important.
Yeah.
If I was a friend, maybe I would encourage you guys to maybe give, if two friends, you can give people hotline numbers. If you don't want to be the person to safety plan, if that's like a lot, of course, we understand. Or you just, you know, you want to give your friend a resource to talk to. Again, like that is what hotlines are for. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is really great because they have a chat option on their website. Yeah. So if it is not safe to talk on the phone, they do have that chat option.
Yeah. And again, like if there's ever anything, please don't ever feel like you cannot reach out to any hotline, but let alone the Domestic Abuse Projects hotline. And we'll give that in a few minutes, but I'll let Veronika take us out.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today while we talk about Bling Empire and its toxic relationships. We can look for our next installment of Relationships Adapt, where we're talking about the immigrant community and domestic violence. And we look forward to seeing you there. And thank you. And don't forget
To keep
keep
it
it real.
real.
But you can always find us at our 24/7 hotline. That number is 610-565-4590. And thank you so
Yes.
much for joining us.
Thanks. And please follow and subscribe at DAP on all social media platforms, or check out our website for more information for additional support for you or someone you may know experiencing an unhealthy relationship. Until next time.
Yeah.